'em all Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was the top man at his craft. But then his number came up and he was gone with the draft. He's in the army now, a-blowin' reveille. He's the boogie-woogie bugle boy of Company B. They made him blow a bugle for his Uncle Sam. It really brought him down because he couldn't jam. The captain seemed to understand, because the next day the cap went out and drafted a band. And now the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's the boogie-woogie bugle boy of Company B. A toot, a toot, a tooty-lad, a tooty blows it eight to the bar. In boogie rhythm, you can't blow a note unless the bass and guitar is playing with him. He makes the company jump when he plays reveille. He's the boogie-woogie bugle boy of Company B. He was a boogie-woogie bugle boy of Company B. Bugle boy of Company B.
Welcome back to Historical American Girl Read-Alouds. Today we're going to read Chapter 2 of Meet Molly. First, I want to show you a map of the United States so you can see about where Molly lived. If you look at the map, you can see that she lived in Illinois. She lived in a city called Jefferson, Illinois. So she's in the Midwest. Not too far from where Kit was, but kind of far away from the dolls that lived on the East Coast like Felicity, or closer to the West Coast like Kaya. Today I have with me not only Molly, but also her friend Emily. Emily is not in the story today, but I'll tell you a little bit about her after we read. So if you remember in Chapter 1, Molly had a hard time eating the turnips that their maid, Mrs. Guilford, had made for dinner. They were eating turnips because that was what they could grow in their garden to try and save canned tin and things like that for the war effort. And also, Molly was hoping to talk her mother into wearing a Cinderella costume for Halloween. So today, hopefully we'll find out what she gets to be for Halloween. Chapter 2 is called Hula Dancers. The next morning dawned all gold and blue and windy. Perfect Halloween weather, Molly thought as she woke up. At breakfast, Mrs. Guilford didn't say anything about the turnips, but she made French toast, which was a sign that all was forgiven. It was Thursday, and Molly's friends, Linda and Susan, were coming home with her after school. They were going to plan their Halloween costumes. They had made a secret pact not to discuss their ideas until they got to Molly's house. "Someone might copy us if they heard our idea," said Molly. Linda and Susan agreed. Besides, it was fun to have a secret pact. It was sort of like being soldiers and keeping battle plans away from enemy spies. As they walked home after school, they met Allison Hargate, who was one of their classmates. She asked, "What are you three going to be for Halloween?" "We can't tell," said Molly. "It's a surprise." "Oh," said Allison. Linda said, "But it's great. It's really a great idea." Susan chimed in. "Yes, it's wonderful. We're going to have the best Halloween costumes ever." Allison looked impressed. Molly was a little worried. The girls hadn't even agreed on what they were going to be. The mystery was making their costumes get a lot of attention. They were really going to have to make good costumes, or else everyone would tease them. "What are you going to be, Allison?" Molly asked. "Oh, probably an angel," said Allison. "My mother said I could wear her white satin dressing gown, and she's already made me some gold wings and a halo." Molly, Linda, and Susan were suddenly very quiet. Molly was jealous. She was sorry she had even asked Allison. An angel? What a great idea! Allison was sure to look wonderful with a halo over her golden hair. It was very hard to have Allison for a friend. Allison was an only child, and her parents were rich and gave her everything that anyone could want. Allison didn't mean to brag about the things she had, but just by telling the truth, she managed to make everyone resent her. "My mother doesn't even have a dressing gown, much less a white satin one," said Linda glumly. "All she has is a brown terry cloth bathrobe. I know she'd never even let me wear that." "Well," said Molly to Allison, "all I can tell you is that our idea is much more, original than an angel." "Yeah, I know, an angel is kind of boring," said Allison quickly. "It was my mother's idea. She made the wings and all." And you can see the picture of a dressing gown there. It was like a fancy robe. "Well, see you later, Allison," said Molly as she and Linda and Susan hurried away. It made them uncomfortable when Allison started being so nice. When the girls got to Molly's house, they went into the kitchen for a snack. "Hello, Mrs. Guilford," they said together. "Hello, girls," answered Mrs. Guilford. She was watering the parsley plants she'd started to grow on the kitchen windowsill. "There are some apples in the bowl on the table. Help yourselves, but please take your apples outside. It's too nice a day to be cooped up in the house." "Thank you, Mrs. Guilford," the girls said as they went to sit on the back steps in the sunshine. Ricky was out back too, shooting baskets at the hoop on the side of the garage. He was trying to set a world record for making the most baskets without missing. As the girls munched their apples, Susan said, "Gee, I think an angel is a good idea. Why don't we be angels too?" "Absolutely not," said Molly. "Do you want Allison to think we stole her idea?" "Allison wouldn't mind," said Susan. "I know," said Molly, "but I would mind. We can think of something just as good." "Like what?" asked Linda. "Well," replied Molly slowly, as if she had just thought of it for the very first time. "How about Cinderella and the two stepsisters?" "Ooh," said Susan, "Cinderella." "Who gets to be Cinderella?" Linda asked immediately. "Well, we don't have to decide that right away," said Molly. Let's wait and see who has the best ball dress, and that's the one who will be Cinderella. The other two will be stepsisters." "I don't think it's fair," Linda stated. "Who wants to be an ugly stepsister?" "You're all an ugly step-sitters today," teased Ricky. "Get it?" "Cut it out, Ricky," said Molly. Ricky went back to shooting baskets. "I think it's a good idea," said Susan. "My sister Gloria just gave me an old prom dress of hers. It's sort of green, with a big petticoat and shiny gold threads at the bottom of the skirt. I'll wear that." "Sorta green," Ricky mocked. "Lima bean green is what you mean." "Ricky, go away," said Molly. But she was thinking that Susan's dress sounded perfect for Cinderella, and it had two very big advantages over Molly's floaty pink dress with the white Angora top. Susan's dress really existed, and Susan already had it. Being an ugly stepsister was not at all what Molly had in mind. "Wait a minute," she said. "Maybe Linda is right. Maybe it's not fair. Maybe we should all be exactly the same thing, like the Three Musketeers." "You'd be perfect as the Three Little Pigs," said Ricky. "Or you could be the Three Bears. Or how about the Three Stooges? Or the Three Kings of Orient?" He began to sing in a loud, teasing voice. We three kings of Orient are, tried to smoke a rubber cigar. It was loaded, it exploded. Stop it! Yelled Molly. And suddenly, Ricky did stop. His face turned red. He bounced the basketball under his legs, then behind his back. He leaned casually against the garage and twirled the ball on the tip of one finger. The girls turned around to see who he was showing off for. It wasn't Mrs. Guilford or even their mother, Mrs. McIntyre. Nobody was there except Jill and her new best friend, Dolores. They were walking up the driveway carrying their school books. Dolores was wearing a bright blue sweater, just the color of her eyes. She had a wide white smile, like a movie star in a toothpaste ad. She stopped and flashed her smile at Ricky. "Hi, Rich," she said. "Rich," snorted Molly. Lately, Ricky had been telling everybody to call him Rich because it sounded more like a soldier's name than Ricky did. "Hi, Dolores," he squeaked in a very odd voice. He turned quickly, jumped, and sent the basketball swishing through the basket just as Dolores went in the door. Molly, Linda, and Susan looked at each other and dissolved into giggles. It was crystal clear to them what Ricky's problem was. Ricky, Rich, had a crush on Dolores. The three girls started to chant. "Ricky and Dolores up in a tree, Kissing. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes Ricky with a baby carriage." Ricky threw the basketball at the girls, but they hopped up and out of the way, making loud, slurpy, kissing noises. "Ricky has a crush," they chanted. "Ricky loves Dolores. Ha 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 hi, Dolores," Molly squeaked, imitating Ricky. She pretended to kiss the basketball. "Ew!" Linda and Susan shrieked. Ricky jumped on his bike. As he sped past the girls, he called, "You'll be sorry! You'll pay for this!" The girls just giggled until they ran out of breath and their stomachs hurt. Finally, they got serious again and went back to the question of what to be for Halloween. "We could be the princesses of England," suggested Linda. "There are only two of them, Elizabeth and Margaret Rose. One of us would have to be their mother," said Molly. "How about being nurses?" asked Susan. "We could all wear capes." "That's what we did last year," Linda and Molly said together. They considered being acrobats, 3 Alices in Wonderland, ice skating stars like Sonia Henney, or the 3 blind mice. No one could get very excited about being a blind mouse. And anyway, Mrs. McIntyre overheard them and said she absolutely did not have time to make a mouse costume for Molly. "And besides," added Mrs. McIntyre, "in wartime, I don't think it's right to use good material for Halloween costumes." Molly, Linda, and Susan groaned. They knew Mrs. McIntyre was right. "But I've got another idea, girls," said Mrs. McIntyre. "I'll show you how to make grass skirts out of newspaper and crepe paper. Then you can be hula dancers." "Well," replied Susan, "my sister Gloria taught me how to make flowers out of crepe paper, just like they did to decorate for the prom. We could string them together and make flower necklaces and headdresses." "I think my father has an old ukulele," said Linda. "It doesn't have any strings, but it will look good." "It's too bad it's so cold, because I know my mother will make me wear socks and shoes and a sweater on top," said Susan. "But at least the flower necklaces will hide most of the sweater." So, the girls decided to be Hawaiian hula dancers for Halloween. Soon after that, the streetlights went on, which meant Linda and Susan had to go home. They agreed to meet back at Molly's house after school the next afternoon to make their costumes. Then they would all go trick-or-treating together. Afterwards, Linda and Susan would spend the night at Molly's so they could talk about how wonderful their Halloween had been. By the time she went inside to supper, Molly had completely forgotten about Ricky's threat to make them all sorry. She was too busy practicing her hula. And that's the end of chapter 2. So you probably heard a lot of things that are similar to your own life, because Molly's more of a recent doll than some of the others that we've read about. For instance, they dress up for Halloween. They have some of the same stories that you probably know, like Cinderella, the 3 blind mice, even the song about Ricky sitting in a tree, Kissing. I think that one's probably still around today as well. One thing I have here today is Molly's birthday cake, and it probably looks similar to birthday cakes that you may have had. And the little candles all come out here. A really pretty yellow border is on the cake. And let's see, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 candles. They're sitting out front of Molly's house here in the Scenes and Settings book today. And I promised to tell you more about who this girl is, who Emily is. So let me read to you a little bit from Welcome to Molly's World before I tell you who she is. It's war. On Sunday, December 7th, 1941, Japanese bombers attacked Pearl Harbor, the site of an American naval base in Hawaii. The attack was just one part of a Japanese plan to create an empire in the South Pacific. The tiny islands that make up Japan were crowded with more than 80 million people. Their army had begun to seize land in countries all around Japan. To force Japan to stop, America held back all shipments of basic supplies such as oil to the country. Japan responded by destroying the U.S. base at Pearl Harbor. And there we have a telegram. It was 2:00 p.m. in Washington, D.C. President Roosevelt was relaxing after lunch when the phone rang. The head of the Navy had just received a very serious telegram. And that's the telegram there. Air raid on Pearl Harbor. This is not a drill. Attack. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor lasted less than 2 hours, but it destroyed most of the base's warships and killed more than 2,000 people. And that's a picture of the ships that were sunk in Pearl Harbor, which you can go today to Hawaii, to Pearl Harbor, and see a memorial and even see one of the ships that sunk. They've left it underwater and built a memorial over it to remember all the soldiers that died that day. Headlines. Most Americans heard of the Japanese attack over the radio or through newspapers. Within days, the news was worse. Japan's allies, Germany and Italy, also declared war on America. So Japan, Germany, and Italy joined forces together and were allies. And then countries like England, France, Russia, and the United States all joined sides against the people who had started the war in Germany, Italy, and Japan. The top there, it says fear. Immediately after the attack, soldiers covered Hawaii's beautiful beaches with rolls of barbed wire. The wire would slow down Japanese soldiers in case of an invasion. So they were afraid that the Japanese would come back and invade Hawaii. Probably one of the reasons why the girls had Hawaiian hula dances on their minds as a Halloween costume. Conquest. Japanese soldiers attacked and conquered more islands in the South Pacific Ocean. By midsummer, it looked as though Japan might even attack Australia. So the war had been going on for quite some time over in Europe, where the countries France, Poland, Austria, England are. The next section I'm going to read is called The Enemy in the Sky. Molly, Linda, and Susan loved to play in the pretend bomb shelter they had made under the card table in Molly's basement. Most air raids in America were just practice drills. Families hurried and huddled together under blankets in the basement until the all-clear siren sounded. But for children, air raid drills were exciting and even fun. So they were afraid that the Japanese might attack the United States as a whole, not just Hawaii, but actually the mainland. And so an air raid was a warning or a practice that planes were in the sky bombing from the air. And so they would practice how to go down in the basement and cover up, and they would have some food and supplies down there. Patrols. Air raid wardens walked the streets during a drill. They made sure that every house had drawn its blackout curtains and that all lights were out. Pitch black. Even car headlights had to be covered during a blackout. Flaps that looked like eyelashes made sure any light shined down and hopefully wouldn't be seen from the sky. And you can imagine they didn't want to be seen from the sky because that would show any airplanes flying overhead where to drop the bombs. So they had to cover all the windows and turn off all the lights in the houses when they had these drills. Stickers. Glow-in-the-dark stickers helped families stay safe and have fun during blackout drills. And there it shows you a poster. Hundreds of uses for blackout cutouts. The new wonder material glows in the dark. Games. Even games were reminders that lights had to be blocked during an air raid drill. Blackout. The bombing planes have been sighted. They will arrive in exactly 2 minutes. Can you black out all the lights in time to save the town? Is the name of that game there. While they were pretending and practicing in the United States, there really were air raids in England and in other countries in Europe. So at the top it says the real thing. In other countries like England, where the bombing was real, air raids were not a game. Every night, Emily said, she had to sit in the dark, waiting, hearing explosions. When she came out, a house she'd walked by every day might be gone. And so that's this Emily. She's from England. And one of the other Molly stories, she comes to stay with Molly. And that's a picture from that book. When Molly goes down in the basement to practice the air raid, Emily gets really scared and upset because she's been through the real thing. Picture on the next page is of a real air raid attack. The Tube. Night and day, the Germans bombed London. Anyone caught on the street when the air raid siren went off dashed for the Tube or subway. People spent entire nights there, huddled together for safety and comfort. Underneath the picture it says, leaving home. Many British parents, like Emily's, sent their children out of London in order to protect them. The children wore tags that told their destinations. Adults made sure they boarded the right trains and ships. So after months and months of bombings where houses were destroyed and people were killed, a lot of parents in the city of London decided that they needed to protect their children by sending them out of London. Some of them went into the countryside of England, but some kids made the trip all the way across the ocean to the United States. That's what Emily did. she made a trip all the way across the ocean and stays with Molly's family. It must have been a really scary time for kids traveling alone without their parents to go stay in a stranger's house. But parents had no other choice. They needed to stay and make a living, but they wanted their children to be safe. If you've ever happened to read the book, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the 4 kids in the book go and have adventures in a professor's house. And it's because they've left London during the bombings to go into the countryside. And that's how that whole story begins. And then we have a little side story here about a girl who had to leave London. Tears and Courage. Claire Bloom was 10 years old when the Germans began bombing her country. Like Emily Bennett, Claire left England to come to America. The day her father took her to the docks was drizzly and cold. When she saw the ship, Claire suddenly understood what was happening. She was leaving home. Claire was lucky. She was traveling to America with her brother and her mother. As they settled into their cabin, Claire's father began to weep bitterly. Claire had never seen a grown man cry. She began to sob too. She was certain she would never see her father again. On the voyage across the Atlantic Ocean, Claire had to be brave. The ship zigzagged to avoid torpedo attacks by German submarines. Claire and her mother and brother slept in their clothes, ready to abandon the ship at a minute's notice. It took 10 days for Claire and her mother and brother to arrive in America safely. One day, Claire would return to England and see her father again. For now, though, a new home and a strange new land lay ahead, America. And there you see the poster that says SAFE, United States Committee for the Care of European Children. And so that was a poster that advertised to people that they could take in somebody like Emily. And so here's Emily Bennett. And one of the cool things that she has is a little album, a little memory album with memories of her family. There's pictures in here of Elizabeth and Margaret Rose, who were the 2 princesses in England at that time. Elizabeth is still alive today. She is still the Queen of England. And she's an old lady, but you can see her on TV a lot of times. And then Emily has pictures of her grandma and grandpa, Grandy and grandmom, her mom and dad, who she calls Mum and Dad, a picture of Queen Elizabeth and the princesses, so that is actually Queen Elizabeth's mother, whose name was also Elizabeth. Then there's Princess Elizabeth with her horse. Before she became queen, she was a horseback rider. This is a very special item for Emily in the stories because it reminds her of home when she's all the way across the ocean. So even though Emily's not in this particular story, she's not with Linda, Susan, Molly, or their friend Allison, I still wanted to show you the Emily doll that I have, which belonged to my daughter Marissa. Both of these dolls did. So at the end of the chapter, they were going to make their Halloween costumes hula dance skirts out of crepe paper. But remember, they had teased Ricky, and Ricky had said something about getting back at them. I wonder if he's going to get back at them having something to do with Halloween. Tune in next time to find out.
Grab yourself a chair and sit down and get you. Gonna hear some news of the military nature. Relax while I give you the latest report. Sport, there never was a finer sight when all our boys were fixed to fight on D-Day, 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 D-Day. We hope they'll soon be coming back, for now they're on a solid track since D-Day, 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 D-Day. It'll take more than a week.